This Means War movie review. So this is one of my scripted movie review series in which I take an old review that I wrote years ago on my weblog and make a YouTube video out of it for whatever that may or may not be worth. In this case, this is a movie that I saw in theaters in 2012. It starred Chris Pine, Tom Hardy, and Reese Witherspoon. I was still living in Cambodia at the time, and I was in the movie theater, and in Cambodia, as in a lot of other Asian countries, not every single Western movie gets a theatrical release. Only certain Hollywood movies get a theatrical release. So at the time I was at the theaters, this was the only movie playing, which is why I saw it. Okay, I'm going to go in now and just read what I wrote 8 years ago, back in 2012. The other day, I was in the shopping mall with a friend, and on a whim, we decided to take in a movie. Neither of us had any idea what was playing, but we were in the mood to sit down in an air-conditioned theater for a couple hours and try to escape the sun, so we weren't feeling picky. This was the only movie showing at the local theater at that time. I had never heard of it before, but I decided to take a chance. In the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, it can't be that bad, right? Competition for movie theater screens these days is so fierce that really bad movies just get released directly to DVD and don't get a theatrical release anymore. Oh, was I ever wrong about that. Within the first 5 minutes of this movie, I knew I had wasted my money. Right from the beginning of this movie, it's painfully obvious that nobody involved in it really cared at all about the quality. I guess this is one of those movies whose sole purpose is just to make a quick buck. Very little money is spent on screenwriting or directing. If the movie is lucky, it manages to suck in a few poor saps who didn't bother reading the reviews, and then it manages to easily recoup its low production costs. And then it disappears into oblivion with all the other utterly forgettable movies. 5 years from now, no one will even remember this movie ever existed. The movie starts out immediately with incredibly cheesy dialogue that makes you think, did people actually get paid to write this? Then, without bothering to build in any sort of suspense or build-up at all, the entire film just breaks into this huge gunfight within the first 5 minutes. The fighting isn't very well choreographed, and so they try to distract from this by just doing a lot of quick edits, which makes the whole thing very distracting and hard to follow. And, at least in my theater, the volume was cranked up way too loudly, so whenever someone got hit with a movie punch, there was this ridiculous over-the-top fake slap noise. That may have just been my theater, actually. That's just the first 5 minutes. But once you see how little thought and care is put into it, you can pretty much predict the rest of the quality of the movie. And you wouldn't be wrong. The genre is supposed to be a combination of action plus romantic comedy, but the comedy parts aren't very funny. It's obvious no one spent a lot of time on this script. The action scenes are poorly choreographed and poorly edited. And the romantic parts are pretty bad as well. Granted, I'm not generally a big fan of romance movies, so I'll leave it to the fans of the genre to critique these parts better than I can. But since all of the characters were more plot devices than actual people, I found myself utterly unable to care who ended up with which girl. On the plus side, the best thing I can say about this movie is that it managed to cater very well to my short attention span. I've seen movies that were a lot more boring, but at least the pace of this movie kept things moving right along. Sure, each individual scene might be terrible, but thankfully none of the scenes last all that long. Also, the soundtrack is decent, is what I meant to say. Soundtrack is decent. So yeah, that's my review from 8 years ago in 2012. And as I said at the time, I don't know if you caught this, I said 5 years from now, no one will even remember that this movie ever existed. Which I wrote those words back in 2012. Which begs the question, do people still remember that this movie exists? I've seen it actually rerun on cable a lot, at least here in Southeast Asia. I don't know if the same is true back in the US. They have different programming over here. So like the HBO in Asia, I think, has different programming than the HBO in America. So those of you who are living stateside, let me know. At least here in Asia, it's still getting rerun on cable a lot. So in that respect, my prediction was maybe not entirely true. Although I suspect the reason it's getting rerun on cable a lot is because it was one of those bad movies that got, you know, they sold the rights to it very cheaply, and so it's very cheap for cable companies to replay it. Is that still how it works? That used to be how it worked back in the day, at least. So I don't think this movie is getting replayed a lot because of its merits. I think it's getting replayed a lot because it was an awful film and somebody got the rights for it cheaply. But I don't know. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. I was looking this up on Wikipedia right before I filmed this video. And Wikipedia, according to Wikipedia, you know, they give that summary at the end, how the movie was received. Critics absolutely hated it. Wikipedia has a few quotes from various critics which sound like they were saying pretty much exactly the same things I was. But then it got like an A- audience score. So maybe the audience, normal people, actually liked it, or maybe that Rotten Tomatoes score isn't all that accurate. I don't know. But yeah, if you remember this movie, let me know what you thought about it, and also let me know, do people still remember this movie, or has it been completely forgotten now?